Welcome, everybody, to the Patterson Report podcast. I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. And we've had a pretty good run of things here we were talking about this earlier when the last time we talked about anything non-Eagles was. And it's been a blissful, God, 6-7 months probably, easy.
I said never because I can't remember.
Yeah, but I mean, everything has just been sunshine and rainbows around the city for the last, let's call it the last 6 months to be safe, probably a little bit longer. And even last week, we were kind of looked back on the Eagles season, look back on the championships, and now we're in that dead part of the NFL offseason where the combine's going on right now. We don't really know. We don't know anything yet. So we were kind of sitting there going, well, shit, we have to talk about the Sixers because we can't avoid it. And we really tried to avoid it a lot this year because it is a dumpster fire across the parking lot in the Wells Fargo Sports Complex. For those of you following along at home, the Sixers are now, God, I believe we're the 12 seed in the East. We're 20-38, and somehow only 2.5 games out of the play-in tournament. So we'll get back to this caption. It's all Jover is how I feel about this whole thing, but you and I haven't talked about your approach yet. It seems as though the team is wanting to push the chips in and stay competitive this year. Daryl Morey has said, look, we're 2.5 out of the play-in. We just need to get this team into the playoffs and anything can happen. I personally do not believe that. You being the roster builder of this podcast or the resident GM of this podcast, are you packing it in on this year or are you competing no matter what?
You know, it's funny because I was just about to say, I know we're talking about the Sixers and the Phillies and no Eagles for the first time in forever, but I think next week we should dedicate the whole episode to the Eagles because free agency opens the Monday after we'd host. So we'll get back to Eagles talk. Speaking of GMing, but you got to throw in the towel, man. I mean, the pick that we're going to give to OKC is top 6 protected. I don't think team's that bad, so I could see why you want to go all in, because if you land in that 7 to 8 range, convey that pick to the Thunder, it's going to look really bad. I know a lot of people got Sentineled yesterday. Have you ever heard of him? NBA Sentinel?
Sentinel, not Sentinel.
I can't speak tonight. Yeah, he said Paul George quit podcasting. That was funny. there was a couple good ones that he had yesterday, but
Sentinel got banned for 24 hours, but they're back today with a vengeance.
Yeah, unreal stuff out there, but I think it's so tough because you're paying so much money to Maxey, to George, to Embiid, who's not playing right now, and you did call me the roster builder here, which I appreciate the compliment, but the goal is kind of to win. The goal is to put butts in seats. That is the ultimate goal. And, it often gets lost sometimes. And to do that, you're going to have a winning team and put Paul George and, all these guys out there every night. So I think you should think about throwing in the towel. I don't think you're going to catch the Wizards or the Nets, who are playing some good basketball. The Nets played really good against the Thunder last night, which surprised me. But I think you throw it in. And what were tickets on SeatGeek like a week ago? $2?
Yeah. And what's interesting about the reason it's such a discussion right now is because, one, we just lost to Chicago. I know what we ended up losing by. We ended up losing by about 30. At one point, we were down 50 to the Bulls. The Bulls are on an 8-game losing streak, actively trying to lose. So I think that's when a lot of fans were like, okay, well, this team might actually be bad enough to land in that top 6. So right now, where we sit, I believe, last I looked, we are in that 6th spot.
I believe so. I can double check that.
The danger with that is obviously in the NBA, you have the ping pong balls. So there's a little bit of chance there. And then if you're in the 6th spot and you get leapfrog at the end of the season, you can't make up for it, then you're in a situation like you just brought up where you tanked, you threw in the towel, and you're the 7th pick. So then the Oklahoma City Thunder, who could very well win the NBA championship this year, will then pick 7 in the next, which would be a complete disaster. So I do get the hesitance to throw it in. I'm almost of a different school of thought where I've watched the Sixer team enough. I think if you shut down PG and Joel and just consistently let the young guys play every night, I think this team this year right now gets better. Not because they're better without Joel on the floor, they're better without Paul on the floor. I'm not saying that. It is so much easier to coach and so much easier to put a game plan together when you know what you're going to have night in, night out. Nick Nurse hasn't done a good job this year. He's also been dealt an impossible hand with some nights having 3 of his stars, other nights having 0, sometimes 1, sometimes 2. Like, that's so hard to game plan for. I think this team wins more games if you shut down PG and Joel.
I thought he was going to lose it at one of those post-game pressers, but
you can see it in his face.
He's so done. I mean, he wants to say it, but he can't say it. I mean, I'm looking at the standings here right now. 2 games back of Toronto for the 5th pick, which the fact that we're saying this in February with what we were talking about going into the season is kind of it's ridiculous. Like, you look at all these teams here in the standings and in the lottery, and all these teams you expected to be here, like, and then there's Philadelphia sticking out like a sore thumb. I mean, San Antonio maybe, but you lost Wemby for the season. Dallas, which we don't need to talk about that, but yeah. Phoenix as well. There's a couple of teams, but I love draft picks. They're great. I mean, but we trust the process,
We trusted it for so long, and it got us absolutely nowhere.
It got us one Kawhi bounce off the rim.
But before the process, I know I'm a little bit more of a Sixer fan, but I know you watch, you keep up with all this Philadelphia sports too. If you remember back when, the process was spurred on by what I thought. I mean, I was like 10 at the time. I didn't know how rosters were built and how, you don't want to be mediocre, you want to win and all that kind of stuff. But the process followed immediately after this Sixer team took the Boston Celtics to 7. They got bounced in the second round, but that team, it was Iguodala, it was Drew Holiday, it was Thaddeus Young. I'm planning on a couple more guys. Vastly outperformed what they should have been able to do. Took the Celtics to 7. And everybody thought, okay, well, now we got something going. And the Sixers, maybe to their credit, they were ahead of their time, said, okay, this was the ceiling for this team. This is as good as we're ever going to be. So we need to tear it all down and build a team who has a higher ceiling. And we sat there and anguished for 8 years. This team was absolute dog shit. For the promise that one day we would be a team that could get past the second round. Only for that team to get exactly as far as Drew Holiday, Andre Iguodala, and Thaddeus Young did before they blew this whole thing up. It's mind-boggling.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because Andre Iguodala, championship. Drew Holiday has a ring.
They're both decorated Olympians with multiple NBA titles. It's ridiculous.
It's something else, and
think of the string of events that had to go wrong for us to wind up where we're at. I mean, I saw a post earlier, and these are a few of them. We drafted Markelle Fultz over Jason Tatum, devastating. You draft Ben Simmons over Jaylen Brown. Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, you can't critique that one.
Ben Simmons was a good NBA player until his head broke. I don't know how to deal with that. Matisse Thybulle over Grant Williams is kind of a push. What's interesting is, Ime Udoka, not a great dude, very good NBA head coach, was on the Sixer bench, and he was hitting the glass ceiling with us, so we left. And then traded Al Horford, who was absolutely ass here, for Danny Green, and Al Horford goes on to win a title with Boston. There's just so many instances where they made the wrong move. Waiving Isaiah Joe for absolutely nothing. Turns out to be a sharpshooter in Oklahoma City, shooting over 40%. We talked about Drew Holiday. Tobias Harris, even this year, took a lesser deal to go to Detroit. Detroit's the 5th seed in the East right now, I'm pretty sure. Like,
Yeah, they
it's
destroyed the Celtics last night too.
yeah, like
Quick
every
work.
time we zig, we should have zagged. It's hard to believe you got that many. Oh, you draft Mikal Bridges for
I was
10
gonna bring it
minutes.
up.
You
You were
trade
missing
him for a guy who barely cracked an NBA rotation. It's every single move has been wrong from Jump Street.
Mikal Bridges was such a layup, man. I mean, like that was the one where
He's-
you're like, you can't miss this. His mom worked for the org, like
Yeah.
it was right there for you, and they said, not today. And they
Hey,
just
what's that guy over there from Texas Tech? I'm interested.
such a slam dunk pick, and like they just
That pick was the Sixers equivalent of Jalen Rager over Justin Jefferson.
I wouldn't take it that far.
Not as far, not their
Not
career,
not that far. Justin Jefferson is almost in a league of his own.
not that their careers parallel each other, but I mean, I felt as an Eagle fan in that moment that this was so crystal clear obvious that you had this absolute stud from LSU sitting there ready for it, and you tried to be the smartest guy in the room and take the guy out of TCU who could have been something.
See, but here's the thing. How he learned from his mistake.
Yes.
He
Darryl
learned.
did not. Elton did not. Brett Brown did not.
They did not learn from their mistakes, and they kept repeating them, which is what leads you to $2 tickets on a nightly basis.
And you talk about the business part of things, which I thought was a good point. I mean, this is a team right now that was trying to sell the city on the fact that they need to, build a brand new stadium for billions of dollars. And I mean, it's tough to do when you're selling $2 tickets. I get that a lot of it's privately funded. Thank God for the Sixers. I think that the city would have done it at this point. But I mean, talk about a nightmare season to announce a change like that.
They honestly, it feels like they kind of lucked out a little bit with the Eagles doing as well as they did.
Yeah, they were ignored for 6 months.
Like I said, I follow it enough, but I didn't know how bad it was until the Eagles season ended. Like I knew it was bad. Like don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Like I was casually watching here and there because that's what I do. But, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I tuned in. I was like, what is going on here?
I had a different experience because I watched them both pretty close to equally. And the Eagles for me were distracted from the Sixers. I was still watching, but no matter how bad things got, I was like, the Sixers fucking suck. But hey, you know what? We got the Rams on Sunday. I got to focus in. The Eagles are getting. It was something where I could go, okay, this sucks, but I have this. Now it's just God. This team is like it makes you kind of come to grips with how dire things are, and it's not even just this year. Like I mean, we'll talk about salary cap. Embiid is owed over $50 million per year for the duration of this contract. On the back end, it's over 60. PG is on another max deal. So you have two guys who look like a shell of themselves occupying per year close to $100 million of cap, if not more.
Yeah.
What do you do? Where do you go?
See, it kind of feels like I'm trying to comp this to a scenario. It kind of feels like the old school Celtics with Paul Pierce and KG and those guys. There wasn't a title here in Philadelphia, but they were going down that road where they were all old, and then the Brooklyn Nets came and bailed them out.
Yeah, we need the Brooklyn Nets.
that's what happened. They had it because they didn't have those high picks. Jaylen Brown was a Nets pick. Jason Tatum, Nets pick. And then, they filled it out from there when they had the 2 stars. That wouldn't have happened if they didn't trade those guys and the Nets didn't give up an absolute haul for
KG exactly. So who's our Nets? Who's going to come in and bail us out? Because the way I'm looking at it, there's nowhere to turn.
That's like the only scenario that I could think about with 2 high-end guys they were older too at that point. I'm pretty sure they were a lot older. Yeah. They were at the end of their career.
They were mid-30s. Well, they were PG's age probably.
I'm gonna look into that one, but so that's like the closest comp I could find for it. Like I could think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's better ones, but
The thing with them is they were just old. Like they were coming off of productive seasons, but you could see the cliff might be approaching. The world is getting a front row seat at what is left of Paul George, and unfortunately, what Joel's body's kind of done to him.
age 36 season for Paul Pierce.
Yeah, PG's what 35 this year.
So it's like it kind of has some parallels to it because how the Sixers were trying to build a new stadium in inner city Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason they traded for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett is they wanted to promote the Barclays Center because that was just newly opening that year. So like, there's a couple parallels there that you could really like draw on because, sometimes you got to step back and think about the business end of things. Like, we love to be a fan and watch, but people have to make money off of it as well.
Yeah, we need our idiot. Like the Celtics got very, very lucky that the Nets kind of, like you said, bailed them out of a horrible situation. We need our idiot. We need our team. There was a report. No, I'm not sure I would have done this either. I mean, I'm not trying to Monday morning quarterback because I love Joel Embiid and I think it's completely unfair what's happened to him. But there was a report today that the Knicks were apparently prepared to offer all of the draft picks they currently had at their disposal for Joel in the offseason. So it would have been, however far out you're able to look draft picks wise, it would have been all their first, all their seconds to get Joel.
I mean, Michael Bridges got 6, so.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, if they brought that up to me in the summer, I would have said, hell no. He's coming off of one of his better playoff performances. He just won a gold medal. He got to play with guys, like LeBron, like Steph, who have been there and won the big game, KD. Like, I thought this year was going to be Joel's coming out party, even in a bigger way. Like, he's always been a great player. I just had such high hopes. And I don't think, I think he gets too much shit about it, to be honest. It's not a laziness thing. Some of the surgeries I've seen that he's considering having is crazy. I mean, there was one where they voluntarily break your hip to change the way that you walk, to take some of the pressure off of the knee that's currently bothering. It is crazy stuff that I've seen reports say that he's open to doing if we get him healthy again. I mean, is it frustrating he's only played 56% of the games he's been eligible for? Absolutely. Do I think for a second it's a laziness thing or a softness thing? I don't buy it.
Really. No. It's just one of those things where injuries don't go your way and it stinks because you think about what could have been. And
yeah, I mean, he won one MVP, but you could argue for 3 seasons he was the most dominant center in basketball. And it was just a complete organizational failure to not be able to put a good enough team around him to get it done. Those 3 years, he was sensational. I mean, you think back to even when Jimmy was here. I mean, Joel's been a top 3 center in basketball for most of his career. And we could never figure out a way to put a winning team around him. So as much as you could say Joel's body failed him, and by extension, he might have failed the city, the organization 100% failed Joel over and over and over.
It stinks because he's never going to have that moment like the Jalen Hurts moment that he just had, or Bedlam at the bank that Bryce Harper has. Like, people remember this team kind of fondly, or at least Joel Embiid, the player, fondly. It's not going to be the same as, a Bryce Harper or a Jalen Hurts or anyone on that Super Bowl team like a Saquon Barkley.
Unfortunately, he'll be forgotten. Where those other guys, I don't think really.
I don't think that
those moments.
Those guys are going to be legends forever, and I sadly don't believe Joel Embiid will be in that category.
No, I think it'll be, remember Joel Embiid. Oh yeah, no, he was pretty good. He got hurt, whatever.
He was really great, and we couldn't win it all with him.
It's just unfortunate because I think he deserved better than that. But they're not going to get their parade down Broad Street. It's not going to happen. Our next best hope is the Phillies, and there's a pressure there too, because you start to look at that lineup, and we were, I would say, ahead of schedule in 22, probably. Felt like on schedule in 23, and they let the Diamondbacks off the hook. Last year felt like, all right, you know what? This team was a feel-good team that needed some heartbreak. Now they're going to come back. They're going to be fired up. This 2024 is the year. You win the division. You're red hot, losing the first round to the Mets. So now all of a sudden you're behind schedule. You got JT Realmuto heading into the last year of his deal. Similarly with Schwarber, similarly with Castellanos. Your whole pitching staff's a year older. Wheeler's a year older. Noel's a year older. Trey Turner, it's another guy who's a year older. Looked a step slower last year. Like now you're behind schedule, and you're hoping these guys can almost, in a sense, turn the clock back in order to get it done. So there's a lot of pressure on the Phillies this year. This is the year to get it done, because if they fall short this year, as much as I like John Middleton, I think he's an incredible owner, he's not a stupid owner. He's not going to blindly throw money at a problem. So if he feels like this team, as it's currently constructed, can't get it done, I wouldn't expect to see a big splash. I wouldn't expect to see him re-sign some guys. So if they want to get this thing done, they got to get it done in 25.
Yeah, which is really, really tough with how good the Dodgers looked through that run. And they got better.
Soto entered the division.
Yep. There's a lot more challenges. There's a saying in sport, there's a saying in sports. I lost my train of thought for a second. It's, you have to win now. Like, you can't say, oh, we'll be back.
No, you may never get back.
The Lions last year, they said, oh man, it was a great run to the NFC title. They lose 20 some players to IR this year. Who knows what's going on next year after they lose their coordinators? You can say the same thing about the Phillies. That year was against the Diamondbacks. That was the year they were going to go in and smoke the Rangers. I fully believe it. They were just the better team, and it just didn't play out that way. And now you're right. They're up against the clock. I mean, hopefully things will revert to the normal. I mean, Bryson Stott said he was hurt, and I saw the at bat where, he rumored to get hurt. It looked like he messed up his elbow a little bit. I think Trey Turner was hurt a little bit, so that's why his speed was lacking. But the guys are getting older, so you're going to get hurt more. That's just how it goes. I mean, father time comes for everyone, unless you're LeBron at this point.
Yeah.
Because,
yeah. I mean, especially when you think of the places we have aging guys. Like, if we had an older first baseman, it's whatever. You figure that part out.
That's fine.
If you have an older corner outfielder, it's fine. You figure it out. But the places we're old is tough. We're getting long in the tooth at starting pitching, which hit or miss. I mean, our guys don't live and die on velo anyway, but, not great. Catcher, brutal. I mean, JT's been a model of consistency the whole time he's been a Philly. He's an athletic freak for a catcher. Doesn't last forever. So him being, in his mid-30s is tough. Trey Turner very clearly lost a step last year. Your shortstop being on the wrong side of 30 is not great. Like, the places we're old aren't places you want to be old, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're 200% right. And you hope some of that youth could kind of offset that with, Jesus Luzardo, Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez on the mound behind those guys. And you just hope that, hey, it's a new year. Alec Boehm's going to be refreshed, kind of ended the year poorly last year. And then the same for Schwarber. Like, he was the only one that felt like came to hit at least that first game of the NLDS.
He always comes in big moments. I love Schwarber for that.
I know. He's just the best. And then Castellanos seems like he always shows up in the big moments, but he's getting older as well. Like, the window might have already slammed shut, and I hate to say that, but it might have already slammed shut. I mean, look, you had the magical run in 22 to get almost all the way there. You lose to the Diamondbacks. I said, I feel like that was the
Astros in the World Series.
Yep. And then last year
23 was the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, okay, I'm messing up the years too. I'm all out of it. So last year, the Braves, their whole team just gets annihilated by injuries. Strider's gone.
They're out of the way.
They were gone. And, the Mets were kind of sneaky. And then, of course, obviously what happened. And then now they add Juan Soto. But I think the Braves are the biggest threat to the Phillies. I think the Mets are going to be good, not great. Their pitching staff is very lacking in a place where, the Braves and Phillies are kind of strong and they're still returning good lineups. So I think I want to go into the playoffs as a wild card again. I don't know about you. I don't want to win the division. Like, it feels like a disadvantage.
Yeah, it didn't work out well. I mean, this team, I don't think as a whole it's a disadvantage because we were the only division winner to lose last year. The way that this Phillies team is constructed, it is because we're not, and that's the one thing we didn't do this. We didn't do a lot this offseason. I shouldn't say that. We do not have a guy. We do not have a table set on this line. Don't have one. There is no one on the Phillies who will consistently put the ball in play. We are so boom or bust. And to your point, that is a nightmare of a team to take a week off. Like, you don't have an Altuve. You don't have, Gene Segura is the last guy we had to kind of look at this way. There's the first baseman out in San Diego. He wins the batting title like every year. Yes, that guy's not on this team. So this team, if they get hot and they stay hot, they're untouchable. The second we get cold, it is game over. And yeah, having a full series off sucks.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I just hope that, it kind of felt like we peaked a little too early last year. Like,
I felt that the whole time, dude. All
you
Philadelphia
were
was
right.
waiting to
You were correct.
Because it always drops.
And it stinks that the way it played out last season. I mean, Dombrowski tried. His big splash, Estevez, that didn't work out in the end. He was good up until that point. Don't get me wrong, but the big moment, it just didn't work out. But I don't know, man. I'm cautiously optimistic. Where the Sixers were full on pessimists. The Eagles were full on optimists. Obviously, that worked out well.
Yeah.
Here I'm treading the line where I'm like, we're gonna probably coast in the playoffs again. There's a lot of wild card spots. Like, the team's really good, so like that's not the problem. We're gonna get there.
They're still 90 to 100 win team, easy.
Yeah, they're gonna get there. It's just the second they get in, if they have to take any time off or have to go against an unmovable force like the Dodgers with Shohei pitching, like,
it's gonna be tough.
It's gonna be really tough, and
No, go ahead. Finish your thoughts.
I was gonna say I understand why Middleton didn't shell out any more money because like the Dodgers are basically a super team, and then you have to worry about the Mets and Braves. Like I understand it. Like he made his swings with Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, and then Schwarber, Castellanos, and all those guys. Like
this team's talented enough as it sits.
Mm-hmm. It's up there, but. Is it good enough to win? I think it is, but like the moment has to be right.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I appreciated about the moves Dombrowski made. I'm not a huge Max Kepler fan, although he has looked pretty good so far. Everybody wanted the slugger in the outfield, myself included. I thought that would have been huge for us. If you weren't going to do that, this was my next best course of action. I like the fact that he didn't try to get into an arms race with the Mets or with the Dodgers, whereas the Dodgers are going to get healthy with Soto. Plus, they always add an offseason and get everybody they want. And the Mets obviously add Soto. I do like that he went a different way and went, you know what? We might not outslug these guys. I'm not going to go spend stupid money on a boom or bust outfielder like the guy from Chicago. Name I'm blanking on. Luis Robert. We're going to go a different way. I'm going to put together what I think is the best starting lineup and the best starting pitching rotation in baseball. We'll beat them another way. We're not going to out-hit them. We'll try to keep them at bay. And I think if Luzardo turns out to be who we think he can be, who he was before he was
2 years ago.
I mean, that is going to be an absolutely disgusting starting five that all five guys have the potential to be an all-star. So I do like that. Try not to beat them at their own game. Put together the best starting pitching you can find, and when your bats go cold, hope they can keep the ship afloat.
Yeah, I mean, Romano's looked good out of the pen as well. I have to say that he was pretty decent in his last appearance. So
the hefty lefty lost a lot of weight too. I don't know if you've seen Alvarado. He looks
I haven't
fantastic.
I haven't had a chance to tune in really that much. I've just seen updates here and there, but
he looks shredded.
Good, because I need to see Jose Alvarado close out a title win. I need it. We've said this years ago. It's so rough with the Phillies though, because you like where they're at, but unlike the Eagles, they're not in the best spot.
No, the Eagles were the Dodgers. When we came into this Eagles season, it was, holy shit, can you believe we put this team together? We were the Dodgers.
Deferring now, like the Dodgers.
Yeah. The Phillies aren't the Dodgers. They're good enough to win. They are absolutely good enough to win it. But to your point, they need a couple of breaks. They can't do it on their
own. Mm-hmm. I mean, Citizens Bank's going to show up. Like in a series, in a hypothetical series against them, you have to capture every game at home.
See, that's the interesting thing. And this will be what we close on, because I want to know your opinion on the reception this Phillies team this year is going to get. This is the first time people have been mad at them, disappointed at the Diamondback series. This is anger. And I'm curious to see, much like the Sixers, where every year you get into the playoffs and you get bounced at a certain point, when things shift back to CBP in one of the opening 2 rounds, will the juice be the same, knowing that the only thing that matters now is a World Series?
Yes, this year. I think this year is the final year of, the magic that is Citizens Bank Park, that, TBS or whoever broadcasts the games is just like, everyone's on their phone like, wow, is this really Citizens Bank Park? And yes, it really is. It's absolutely incredible. I don't want the magic to fade away, man. It's so cool. I mean, if you're a Phillies fan and haven't been to a postseason game, I strongly recommend you get out, or even just a random game on a Sunday night. Like,
magic is the word to put it. Like, CBP in the postseason, it feels like the Penn State whiteout game. It feels like an SEC football game on a Saturday night. Like, it's otherworldly.
What was it? The ender, one of the end games Sunday night against the Braves. I got to go. You could have tricked me and said, I didn't know anything about baseball. You could have told me it was a playoff game. I would have believed you. Like, it was absolutely nuts. I mean, there was some chirping done, but that is CBP
Phillies
as well.
Braves. I mean, hate each other. Like, anytime the Braves come to town, it's great. But yeah, to your point, if you've never been, go. I mean, if you're standing room, just go.
It's worth it. I've been in standing room twice, 2 playoff games. They lost them both, so I'm not going this year. Actually,
I've knock on wood, never seen them lose a playoff game. I've been to 3. They're 3-0. And I went last year to one of the games that they won. Not that,
I went to game 1. It was great.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't great. I went to game 7 I went to game 7 against the Diamondbacks. I mean, I might just be bad luck. I mean,
yeah, you might be banned.
I didn't show up the rest of the series for the Phillies Mets though, so it's not totally on me. But like, I don't think I'm going back this year because I can't risk. I need to see a title win, and I will stay home if I have to.
I think that it is not a guarantee that Citizens Bank Park brings the juice this year. I think it will be wholly dependent on this Philly team. If they sputter their way into the playoffs again like last year, listening to the games and watching the games on TV, I thought Citizens Bank was a little bit more timid last year than they typically are too. Like the confidence on the field wasn't there, and the confidence from the fans and the team didn't seem to be there.
It grew late. There was that midseason lull where they just started losing like every other game. It felt like.
Well, I'm talking even like when the Mets series, and granted the Phillies gave us nothing to cheer about, but it was relatively quiet.
Well, I mean, that Kyle Schwarber home run at the beginning of game 1, I couldn't think. I couldn't hear my own thoughts. Like, so like, there's 0 and 100 in Citizens Bank Park. So,
and I think that's the thing that this year this team's going to have to give the fans something to believe in. Like, the place isn't going to go bananas for every effort. I think, if meaningful games, like any game, 4 or 5, depending on the series, 6, 7 for longer series, yeah, the fans are going to show up and bring it. I don't think it's a given. I think this team's got to give them something to believe in this year.
I think, like I said, there's a year more, but to your point, even if it's not like that, I think when like the Mets and the Braves come to town, they're gonna show out no matter what. Like,
I hope so.
I think, with the Eagles winning, maybe there's some added grace across the parking lot where, hey, we could have 2 parades in a year.
Yeah, the only other team that can do it is the Phillies.
Yep, and it's just one of those things where I hope that the fans hang in for one more year because, like, trust me, it stinks. I think everyone knows that unless you're a Dodgers fan, but like, and even they know that.
That's the other side of the coin. It is outright selfish because, I mean, if you've been a Phillies fan long enough, you remember what 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 was like. Like, we went 11 years without a team you can really be proud of. So, I mean, yes, they've underachieved 2 years in a row now. It's still a ton of fun for your team to be this good at baseball year in and year out. So enjoy it. I just think this is the first year this team's will have to earn all the love and admiration that they've been gifted the last 3 years.
I get behind that. The boos might be a little louder this year.
You might hear, they could get booed this year because there's expectations.
It could turn quick, like exponentially quick. Like, say this team gets off to like a 10-10 start, like it's gonna get bad really quick.
Yeah, it's gonna get hot. So hopefully they come out strong, and we don't have to worry about it. But we will keep a close eye on the Phillies. We'll check in on the Sixers from time to time. But for this Eagles-less week of the Patterson Report, I'm Brandon. That's Ryan. We'll see you next week for free agency and the beginning of draft discussions.